The blood-red sky shattered like glass upon the land. Rays of desperate daylight piercing through, and at last the hero of Hyrule was victorious. Where once lay a land doomed to calamity, finally, peace and stillness reigned. Ganon was no more. Struck down by the hero and sealed away by the princess, never again would the beast return to that age. The noise of the great battle quieted, and silence rang out through the land. Soon after, birds roosting within the trees of Hyrule's plains could once again be heard singing songs of relief, their chirps echoing throughout the rolling hills and little rivers. Link, clothed in a battle-ravaged green tunic, outfitted with broken chainmail armor, held firmly onto his war-torn paraglider as he descended from the now clear sky, adrift in the wind. Sailing down to the tall grass of the plains from where he defeated his enemy, all things had returned to the proper order. The hero of Hyrule turned toward the soft voice calling out to him, the same voice that guided him through the final battle just before. He turned swiftly, eager to meet her, the one who sealed away the Calamity. A bright, glowing silhouette of yellow, shimmering light appeared near him, and in a flash lay before him the most beautiful young maiden, no, princess, he'd ever had the honor of gazing upon. She descended from the heavens like an angel. Her beauty was beyond compare, and her stormy green eyes trapped his gaze, and suddenly, all memories of her came flooding into his mind. Fond memories of a princess he once knew and cherished in a time long forgotten. He was her chosen knight, after all, he thought to himself. As long, dormant feelings stirred within him, the princess turned away. Her golden blonde hair caught the wind as she stared across the plains, her back towards him. Slowly, Princess Zelda raised a hand to her chest as a deep sigh escaped her lips.
I've been keeping watch over you all this time,
she said, voice soft as a whisper.
I've witnessed your struggle to return to us, as well as your trials in battle. I always believed that you would find a way to defeat Ganon.
Her royal gown, still majestic and white, despite its well-worn threads, flowed around her as she turned back to face him.
I never lost faith in you over these many years.
With hands gently folded before her chest, as if in prayer, she offered her champion a soft, sweet smile.
Thank you, Link, the hero of Hyrule.
The knight's lack of a response caused a subtle hint of doubt to cloud her smile, with more force than she likely intended, and perhaps a hint of fear. She spoke again.
Do you really remember me?
Still meeting her emerald gaze, he found the only word he could muster.
Yes.
Link, there is so much I wanted to say before you fell in battle.
Don't worry yourself, Princess.
The hero interjected, his hand raised.
The battle has been won, and you are finally safe. That's all that really matters now. There is time enough later for all the rest.
Spoken like a true knight. Duty until the end. Even after all these long years, you still haven't changed. I suppose some things cannot truly be forgotten.
Her face became suddenly downcast.
I fear that I'm the one who might have changed. That perhaps I am no longer much like the princess of your memory.
The princess's hand fidgeted as she looked away. Must she still feel so nervous just being next to him? It had been 100 years. And yet, it again felt as it had in those later days, that too short time after she'd overcome her bitterness to see the true quality of the young man before her. It was how she felt when she truly met him for the first time, when she got to know the real Link. Zelda cringed a bit at the memory of the old her. The haughty royal who had looked down her nose at the commoner who thought himself superior to her, enough to take the mantle of the hero and succeed where she had failed. She fell deep in thought, reminiscing old memories of when she first met the real Link. It was just after the horrible run-in with the Yiga clan, all those long years ago, she thought back. It was then that she remembered how she felt just before she thought her end was all but certain. She had fallen to the ground, cornered. Staring up from the dusty, hot desert sand, there she lay out of breath, trembling, with her hands sweaty. She closed her eyes in absolute terror as the masked assassin slowly raised his weapon above her head, just about to deal his killing blow, when a selfless knight appeared from out of nowhere. With a thundering clash of lightning speed, the knight's swift sword slaying the foe before he could carry out his finishing strike. There, she lay and hesitated a moment in shock, afraid. She slowly peeked her eyes open, worried about what she might have seen. Amazed and stricken to her stunning relief, she saw standing before her was a handsomely brave young Hylian warrior clad in royal blue garb, which was of her own making. There, her quiet guardian valiantly stood as a sentinel before the rest of her attackers, striking bone-chilling fear into their hearts. They scurried away from his fierce judgment that was certain to be dealt to them if they so much as touched her. It was then, at that very moment, the princess began to look at her silent protector with different eyes. She remembered what happened that day over 100 years ago.
No.
She looked back to the hero with a jolt, whose voice had so cleanly cut through her thoughts. On his face, her knight had a reassuring smile, warm as a new campfire.
No, princess.
He repeated.
I think, looking at you now, you are more the princess of my memory than ever before.
Zelda's heart raced, joyous at the words. Still smiling, the hero, her wonderful knight, held out his hand to her. She took it slowly. The feeling of their hands meeting was like a jolt of electricity traveling up her arm. She met his smile with one of her own, but it faded away as she caught sight of the ruined castle in the distance.
Well, let's have a look, shall we?
Link and the princess made their way and walked the hollowed, unkempt cobblestone roads of the once great city, where denizens of Zelda's kingdom had long ago gathered. It had been a happier, more prosperous time. The land of Hyrule was once a shimmering, shining jewel, the envy of the world, and blessed by the goddesses with everlasting prosperity.
Now that kingdom is no more.
Zelda thought of herself as she looked upon the ruin. There was no laughter of children to be heard playing in the great fountain, nor the roaring shouts of merchants haggling their goods in the marketplace. She recalled the famous opal trinkets from Zora's domain and the freshly caught fish brought in daily by the quaint river folk who would ferry barrels filled to the brim with the bounty wild fishermen of Lauraline village. There was no familiar aroma of freshly baked breads, nor the delectable scent of her favorite jam-filled puff pastries that once permeated the air as she walked up and down the early morning lit streets of town. Not even the noise of the annoyingly boisterous young postman, who would never miss an opportunity to sing the princess's praises in greeting every morning when she walked the busy roads of Castletown Square. Even him she missed. But most of all, she missed hearing the strong voice of her wise, kind father, the good king of Hyrule. There was nothing left but the home they once loved and remembered. Nothing left but the foul stench of decay and the deafening sound of silence. It was a sad reminder to Zelda and Link both of the high price of their victory and how hard won peace truly was. The two soon found themselves standing below the castle's grand entrance, gazing upon the decimated and smashed-in portcullis, and captivated by the sheer destruction left from the siege a century ago. Blowing from the east came a chill wind, which waved the battered and broken sigils that once proudly adorned the castle's walls, flags of a mighty kingdom brought to its knees, relics from an age long past. They flapped and drooped in the wind, holy and threadbare. The princess and her knight used this moment to look toward the castle keeps that still stood, offering silent prayers to all they loved and lost, and the sacrifice of those who tried to defend them. The kingdom was saved at long last. Yet, there would be no song sung or parade jubilees that day. Too many innocent lives were numbered among the dead. Silently standing there, as the minutes passed, Zelda finally heaved a deep sigh of both relief and closure. Turning to Link, she spoke.
We did all we could. Now it is our duty to show the good people of this world, of this age, that they are also not forgotten.
Zelda held her chin high, and with a look of firm resolve and determination, she smiled toward her knight.
Come, hero. There is so much more for us to do.
The pair made their way past the walls of Castletown, stepping into the great open wilds of Hyrule Kingdom. Already, the smell of the air here was more fresh and pleasant than the rain of the Calamity, and the gentle breeze carried along a sweet scent of lavender. Despite the scent of the flowers, thoughts of the journey ahead caused Zelda to sigh in trepidation. Link, perhaps noticing his princess's mood, stretched his hand outward. The princess caught the brief flash of a cool smile on her knight's face as he gripped his Sheikah slate tightly in his hands and seemed to mutter something under his breath. A spell? An incantation? A sneeze? Zelda wasn't certain. Suddenly, a beam of golden light burst forth from the slate, dancing upon the grassy field before them, slowly, as a shining blue aura whipped and pulsed around the golden sparks. Zelda saw them all coalesce into an artificial mount, a machine resembling a gallant steed. The princess gasped with delight at the display.
Oh my! Well, now I know you certainly haven't been bored all this time that I've been gone.
Yeah, the Sheikah Master Monk, Maz Kashia. He calls it the Master Cycle Zero.
Link explained, his hand reaching up to self-consciously scratch the back of his head beneath his green cap.
You know, for the hero.
Suddenly, to Link's complete shock, Zelda leaped onto the Master Cycle Zero, dress somehow staying properly in place all the while. She hadn't even asked his permission.
Then again, I'm the princess. I don't need anyone's permission, thank you very much.
She thought with a grin. Under normal circumstances, Zelda would never have dreamed of doing something so rude. After all, she was raised to be a proper young lady. In this case, however, she found she simply could not help herself. She had a deep fascination with all such mysteries and curiosities of the world, things nobody quite understood. Link understood this about her, of course, having accompanied her often enough on those research trips in the time long past.
I learn well enough now not to ever come between the princess and her scholarly toys. No good could ever come of that, that's for sure.
He thought to himself. The princess's eyes were wide and shining with pure childish delight at the sight of functioning ancient technology that wasn't trying to kill them.
What a wonderful feeling indeed,
she thought. These things were her passion, the cogs The gears, the screws, all of it intrigued her. They were old, very old. Yet, they were also very new, and the mysteries they held called to her like nothing else. Such machines had been rare, even in her time. And even then, it was usually only those ancient guardians that remained functional. But this device, so very curious.
Well, what say you, hero?
She playfully called to Link, as she began to seek out the machine's controls with poking and prodding fingers.
Shall we make for Kakariko upon the back of this fine steed? I've no doubt we can get there at great speed with this fine artifact in our possession. We must let Impa know of your victory.
From the back of her new mechanical horse toy, Zelda sent a playful wink toward her knight, urging him to join her. Link, for his part, simply nodded, and he swiftly lifted himself onto the mount, positioning himself directly behind her on the seat.
How do you suppose we get this boy to go?
She asked, looking over her shoulder. She hadn't intended to lock eyes with him, yet she did, and the sudden knowledge of his closeness made her heart flutter. Her cheeks went red as an open hydromelon as he stared back at her, deep into the emerald green of her eyes. She verily nearly jumped when he reached over to place his hands, warm, comforting, protective hands, cozily over hers, and gently secured them to the mount's handles.
Hold on.
And with a loud, "Yeah!" command, her knight kicked the mechanisms into gear, and they were off at speed.
He didn't seem to notice what happened.
Thought Zelda, as her blush faded away.
Then again, what did happen?
Link hadn't noticed the effects his closeness had brought about in her. Mostly because he was too focused on just what effects her closeness had brought upon in him. His hands shook nervously, and his throat tightened up from the mere thought of her proximity in that moment. Fortunately for him, he soon found an adequate distraction from such thoughts in the sounds of grinding wheels, the spinning and broken earth slinging through the air, and feel of the wind rushing against his face. They were the sensations of adventure, and Link loved adventure.
Link! Just maybe you shouldn't go so fast!
Zelda squealed, an unintentional smile of pure glee on her face, even as she called for her knight to slow them down. Catching the briefest glance of her joy from over his shoulder, Link grinned to himself.
Slow down.
He instead chose to floor the driving mechanism. Zelda had no time to prepare herself, as the two of them shot high over the first hill, leaving nothing but mud-torn grass in their wake.
Link! He did that on purpose!
It didn't really matter, though, she thought. The ride was such great fun that she was beyond caring. Her face was lit up like a firecracker on Midsummer's Eve. Instead, she decided simply to smile and enjoy the trip. The two of them rode against the backdrop of the sunset, speeding through the grassy rolling hillsides and open meadows of Hyrule. The war was over, but for them, their journey had only just begun. And at the end of the particular road lay Kakariko Village, where Impa awaited them. Several hours later, after zipping through the tall brushlands and abandoned roads of Hyrule's inner kingdom, and bouncing over every hill between the castle and Kakariko, with just about all the excitement they could stand, Link and Zelda felt the Master Cycle Zero begin to sputter as they approached a small gorge not far from their destination. It was then, with a growl of confusion, Link realized the controls had completely locked themselves. Rather than slowing, the mechanical mount picked up more and more speed on the downhill slope with every passing moment. At this rate, with the machine all but dead, and the road slick and dotted with puddle from earlier rainfall, Link wouldn't be able to stop it from carrying them right off into the gorge. He'd originally intended to leap the gap, certainly, but he couldn't do it without precision control. Zelda's heartbeat began to quicken as she realized that they couldn't clear the gap. A frightful chill shot up her spine. Her arms locked and her hands tensed as she began to brace for the inevitable impact upon the no doubt treacherously sharp rocks that awaited them at the bottom of the gorge. It was grimly humorous in a way. After defeating the most terrible monster Hyrule had ever known, they were about to be done in by a combination of bad luck and gravity.
Link, what are we going to do?
Zelda shrieked in panic as her fear began to overwhelm her.
The machine isn't responding. We can't make the jump.
With only just seconds left until they met their doom, Link swiftly reached for the Sheikah slate attached to his belt. Gripping the slate firmly, he held before him and the princess, and called upon the power of magnesis, the ability to manipulate the forces of magnetism and bend metallic objects with the power of just his will alone. By sheer chance, the knight had spotted an outpost off to his side. It looked like it had once been the home of a small resistance force from a century ago against the siege of the Calamity. Though it now stood abandoned with dismembered guardians, he cared not for its history, for the moment, only that it might save him and Zelda. Not too far off in the distance, standing upright in the middle of the ruined fort, was a decayed monument pillar. Hoping for the best, it would need to have something metal on it for the plan to work. He took aim with the Sheikah slate. The slate cast out a small beam of glimmering energy, translucent and bright, taking hold of something attached to the pillar with a snap. Their anchor, their one chance to survive this, turned out to be a decrepit old flagpole stuck fast into the stone pillar. Lucky indeed that this had been made of metal and not wood. Link grasped the slate as tightly as he could, as its power firmly locked onto the pole and the bond jerked and yanked them back counter to the force of the autonomous mount. The momentum flung them around, turning and slingshotting their mount parallel to the edge of the cliff. Raging through mud and scratching through tree branches with their wheels skipping alongside the edge of the cliff, the riders and the machine slowed to a miraculous halt. Regardless of the incredible save, the mount remained locked, its power drive fuming and steaming. Zelda cautiously peeked one eye through her fingers to see where they stood, and sighed with relief.
Well, I think the worst's behind us. Why are these wondrous machines that I love so much trying so very hard to kill me, even without cannon?
She thought. Quickly, she and Link dismounted, unsure of just what had caused the divine mount to fail, and shaken at the very close call they experienced.
I don't understand. Things were going just fine before.
The princess gazed quizzically at the machine, hand firmly placed beneath her pretty chin, and one sleek brow lifted up high as she inspected the poor mount's remains. Before she could gather any reasonable thoughts as to why they were stuck, a gust of chill wind struck her. It was too much. Soaking wet, and only wearing a thin gown as she was, she shivered visibly from the cold. She knew for certain now the worst was not over. As her shaking intensified, her cheeks turned rosy, and she attempted to rub warmth into painfully stiff hands using the fog of her breath. Link could feel the fierce sting of the cold air as well, but took care to consider his princess's condition first. He reached back to the satchel strapped to his back buckle. Inside, he found a trinket, one of the only sort that could be a remedy of the situation. A ruby amulet forged from the burning foundries of the Goron smiths, a place where it was always hot as a simmering cauldron. The knight walked up to Zelda, who was too cold to notice his approach, and secretly slipped the amulet around her wrist. The special rubies mounted in the band helped the power of warmth, and it was the light of Death Mountain's deep, molten caverns that glowed within them. The Goron skillfully learned to tap into this raw, unrefined power over the ages, and the mastery had led to the crafting of many fine jewels that hummed with the fiery essence.
It is unfortunate that I have only just one of these,
Link thought to himself.
She needs this more than I do.
Almost immediately, Zelda felt an invisible blanket of hot summer roll over her. Confused, and wondering if she perhaps shifted into a hypothermic state, she looked around to see what had caused this feeling. Noticing the fine piece of jewelry now attached to her wrist, she looked up to Link, and the heat of an embarrassed blush replaced the red of the chill air.
Thank you, Link.
Zelda wore a soft smile. It was a greater gift than simple warmth, though Link had no way of knowing. Zelda would never admit it, but the princess missed all the comforts of home.
Oh, what I would give for just one pleasant night's rest on my feather pillow beside the hearth,
She thought.
You probably didn't think the princess was such a quitter,
She said, looking away from her knight.
considering all those talks of adventuring out on my own to study the world and all that from before.
Attempting to change the topic, she returned to examining the divine mount. Wait a moment.
Aha! That must be it!
The princess exclaimed, pointing enthusiastically skyward. Link shivered against the cold. He wasn't going to complain, though. He'd dealt with these conditions before. But did she really need to do all this analyzing now?
Yes, it must be so. The mount must have lost its ability to function after the threat of Calamity Ganon disappeared. The Guardians went inert too, with no purpose apart from defending the hero against Ganon. They must have reverted back to a dormant state. Of course. Why didn't I think of this before?
With a smile, the princess turned to face her knight once again.
Well, hero, it would appear that our mystery has been solved.
Her words trailed off at the realization that Link was shivering slightly, still battling the cold. Having been rendered immune to the weather thanks to the power of the bracelet, she'd all but forgotten that her knight wasn't himself, shielded from the inclement weather.
Oh my goodness, I am so sorry, Link.
She exclaimed, face once again red with embarrassment. That had been happening to her a lot as of late.
Let us be off quickly. Certainly Kakariko cannot be too far from here.
Though her concern for his well-being was clear, Link had no desire to look weak in front of the princess. With a bit of effort and strength of will, he forced his body into compliance and shook off the chill. Immediately, his shivering halted, and the chattering of his teeth ceased. He grinned reassuringly at Zelda, who just stared in belief at his ability to casually shrug off the cold.
I don't know how you do it, Link.
As if in response, Link held out the Sheikah slate, compelling the divine mount to return to it. Zelda immensely enjoyed watching the awesome power of the Sheikah slate on display, mesmerized by the blue energy auras that materialized from every which way. The mount, now safely stored away, Link and Zelda worked to get their bearings on their location within the confines of the kingdom. Link spotted the path, and the two made their way into the direction of Kakariko Village.
Those southern hills off in the distance. Looks to be about a mile or two. And judging by the smokestacks up in the air, definitely Kakariko. We should be able to make it by nightfall.
He thought.
You can make out the path if you look this way, princess.
The knight said, pointing toward the southern horizon.
No need to call me Princess, Link. You know, we were on a first-name basis before all that ugly business with the Calamity. Remember?
Zelda chastised, looking at him with a playful glance.
Yes, Zelda.
The knight replied, fumbling to correct himself. His nostrils flared as he caught scent of something in the air.
Whoa, that's not just any old wood smoke.
Suddenly, Link crouched down to knee-height, a look upon his face of the sort a wild wolf might make. One, hot on the trail of some unsuspecting prey. Zelda could not help but giggle at the sight.
You truly are the hero I remember, Link,
she said through her laughter.
You never could resist a meal, regardless of whether or not it tasted any good.
The princess had to cover her mouth to hide her face, as her giggles turned into hearty chuckles.
I sure hope your cooking has improved since I've been away.
The princess remarked between gasping breaths.
So dreadful. Those poor pies never had a chance.
Actually, I have. And I have just happened to learn from the best.
Link countered as he grinned at her.
Oh, really? And who, may I ask, is the enchanting person responsible for this miracle?
She placed her hands on her hips and stared at him with a false pout on her face. Though, she found she couldn't quite meet his eyes.
You really don't know?
Link asked, a charming smile on his face as he looked toward her.
It was you. I remembered some recipes you made for us when we traveled together, just before the Calamity struck.
Link looked away, embarrassed at the admittance.
For some reason, they were the first memories that came back to me.
He spoke quietly, nervously reaching up to scratch at the back of his neck.
It seems my mind might have forgotten everything about you at first, but then my stomach simply couldn't.
Oh, at least you remembered the important things about me. I guess I should be grateful.
Yeah, for some reason, I forgot all my bad cooking habits. I picked up where you left off in my memories. It sort of came natural to me after that. Luckily, I remember everything now.
At that moment, the unexpected happened, as the princess's stomach let out an incredible growl. The sound was such that even Link, walking a few paces ahead of her, noticed its roar. All she could do was look away, trying to hide the fierce blush on her face.
Well, well, well. It looks like I'm not the only one that's hungry here. Come on, let's go get you something to eat. It's definitely Kakariko up ahead.
The pair of travelers swiftly worked their way through the long corridor of grassy hills that turned into rocky mountainsides, leading into the long gully entrance of Kakariko. It was an old Sheikah farming village, peaceful, wedged neatly in the center of 3 canyons. A good position, strategically speaking, for a simple tribe to live in safety from outsiders who would have wished ill upon them. While martial powers had been well known among the Sheikah people of old, their truest natures were that of tranquility and unwavering loyalty to the Hyrulean royal family. As the two of them neared the village proper, Link could almost taste the sweet aroma of fatted piked pork wrapped in banana leaves, roasting buried over an unground fire. He prided himself on his keen sense of smell. No delicacy could escape his nose.
The Sheikah are culinary masters, well ahead of their time.
The knight thought. Link hadn't once skipped out on a chance to stop by Kakariko for a hot meal during his travels to free the divine beasts. He even learned a trick or two from one of the proud cooks who lived there. That particular lesson had been on how to properly fillet a wild salmon and how to stew vegetables properly. The trick was to use mineral water to prevent dilution of the flavor. As a farming village, Link had always been able to count on them to have a steady supply of all sorts of tasty things. Whether boiled in a pot, roasted over an open fire, or fried up in a scalding pan, whether it be the savory, buttered, swift carrots, or the sweet cream of pumpkin puree, and so many other delicious dishes. Link loved them all. Truly, his deepest pleasure in life was that of a good meal. Zelda and Link finally made their way through the canyon corridor toward the tall wooden archway where watchmen would greet passing travelers entering the village. The village itself was of an older style, the flat bamboo rooftops tied together with straw, along with the curved inverse arches that give the homes a feudal feel. Fitting with classic Sheikah tradition, the style was different than Hyrule Castle Town, to be certain. As they slowly walked through the main entrance leading into the village, a hush fell over its people as more and more villagers caught sight of them. Stunned looks and murmurs of confusion could be heard among them as Link and Zelda trotted along toward the heart of the village and the home of its elder.
Who is that? Is that, the princess? She's been dead for over 100 years. It cannot be so.
I heard she died and was buried along with her knight and Bellatrix. Are they back from the dead? Could it really be them?
The foul odor of the Calamity has disappeared. It must be.
The voices were a muddled mess of disbelief, uncertainty, and the faintest glimmers of a hope long thought lost. Word spread like wildfire throughout the small town, and a crowd began to gather as rumor got out of the possible return of the princess and her hero. In front of the elder Impa's residence, her attendants worked to keep the crowd from smothering their visitors, pushing them back as they continued to try and catch a closer glimpse of Zelda and Link, who were nearing the long, creaking bamboo steps that led into the elder's home. As soon as Zelda placed her first foot onto the bottom step of the stairs, the double doors guarding the entrance to the home swung open, and a gust of wind fell over the crowd. Everyone stood quiet. Waiting eyes focused at the top of the stairs.
"I've been expecting you,"
came a voice from atop the steps.
"I've been waiting an awfully long time."
The elder, usually so old and frail, now seemed filled with a youthful vigor. As she stepped from within her home, she spoke from above the masses in a powerful, commanding tone. Cloaked in an ancient robe and wearing her wide straw hat, she triumphantly held her head high for all to see as she made her way down the steps. Upon reaching the bottom, she smiled at the princess and her knight, a kind and familiar smile, full of wisdom.
You sure do know how to keep an old woman waiting. The suspense nearly killed me, my dear princess."
Her words were swiftly followed by a sudden and certain bend of the knee, a long overdue gesture of respect to her returned liege, and one she'd long hoped she would still be alive to offer.
"We have faithfully tried to guard the kingdom in your stead. I give you the realm. May it shine in your care, and may your smile grace us, and anoint the great land of Hyrule once more. I have missed you and your smile in these many long years of darkness and despair. Now, when hope seemed all but lost, when our hour was at its most dire, you come to us and fulfill the prophecy of legend. May the clouds of doom depart away, and may your light shine upon us all once again."
As she bowed, a commotion behind them took Link and Zelda by surprise. All the people of Kakariko, young and old alike, bowed with reassuring reverence, now convinced unequivocally that their princess had indeed returned to them. Link caught off guard by the sudden display of respect, and suddenly remembering his duty as Zelda's knight, quickly bowed as well. It was, of course, no less an honor than his princess was due. The silent display of fealty was short-lived, interrupted by a whistling song that could be heard just beyond the doorway where Elder Impa stood. Paya, apparently unaware of what was happening, absent-mindedly stepped out of the doorway, only to immediately notice everyone in the village bending the knee to a stunningly beautiful, blonde young woman standing in a tattered dress among them.
Eek!
The girl yelped softly, dropping the platter of fresh fruit she had been carrying and quickly falling to her knees. Face low to the floor in supplication at the realization that this woman standing beside Link must surely be the princess. A woman 100 years lost. A woman she'd only heard stories of her entire life. Now, returned at long last. The village was so quiet in its reverence that when a lone apple from Paya's tray continued to bounce from every step of the stairs, every impact sounded like a deafening crash, echoing throughout the entirety of the area.
Oh no, I'm so stupid.
Paya stammered under the breath of embarrassment, though the words were still loud enough for Zelda and Link to hear.
I'm so sorry. Please forgive me.
Zelda, without a moment's hesitation, reached for the fallen apple that come to a stop just near her toes. Picking it up, she made her way up the steps, halting only after reaching Paya. Crouching down so that she could meet the shy girl's eyes, the princess offered her a soft smile.
Hello, Pura.
She greeted her, holding out the apple like a friendly offering.
I must say, it's been a very long time.
Face immediately reddening, even as she instinctively reached out to take the proffered apple. Paya waved her free hand in front of her to explain the case of mistaken identity.
Oh, no, I'm not Papura. I'm Paya. People do say I resemble her when she was my age, though. I'm sorry.
Oh my.
Zelda replied, her smiling only widening.
Of course you're not. Silly me. That would make you over 100 years old. I truly need to get used to the missing time. Forgive me, Paya. I am pleased to meet you.
With a gentle hand, Zelda eased Paya from her position on the floor and motioned her down the steps where she joined Impa, Link, and the still bowing villagers. Her heart warmed and her spirit humbled. Zelda addressed the waiting crowd from atop the steps.
I am so pleased to have met you all. You honor me far too much, for it is I who owe my allegiance to all of you. Stand, my people. This day is yours,
She declared. The people rose at her command, and a great cheer erupted for the return of the princess and to the new era of prosperity that surely awaited them, for the calamity was vanquished, and all things should be restored to their former glory. Impa, having slowly made her way to stand next to Zelda, called for the people's attention, silencing the crowd yet again with her firm, wise voice.
Hear ye, all friends of the royal family, watchers of the realm.
She shouted, face positively glowing with ecstatic joy.
The princess has returned to us. The calamity has been slain and banished. The hero walks among us, and we have much to celebrate this night. Let us partake of food and drink, and remember well this day as the day death challenged us at our gates and was left wanting. We were mere moments ago already preparing a feast to celebrate the blessed harvest pulled from our own soil. Now, let us celebrate something much, much more. Let us rejoice in the return of the Chosen One. Let us rejoice in the return of she who carries the blood of the goddess, the one who is destined to lead the future, not only of our people, but of all the free people of Hyrule into a golden age once again.
A single tear streaked the face of the old woman as she closed out her speech. At last, her century-long war had finally come to an end. A roar of cheers filled the air. Men of the village rushed to prepare tables, chairs, and comforts for the noble guest of honor. Women ran to finish the decoration and preparations for the feast. Meanwhile, amidst all the commotion, a 4-year-old little girl in a yellow dress, hair wrapped with a bow, and held up with sticks, snuck behind Princess Zelda to tug at her still muddy dress. Zelda turned at the sensation, and the sight of seeing children again filled her heart to a bursting with love and compassion. Slowly, she lowered herself to her knees so that she stood level with the face of the small, bright-eyed child.
What do you have there?
Slightly apprehensive and shy, the little girl carefully revealed what had been hidden behind her back, tightly clasped into her tiny hands. It was a flower, but not just any flower. It was a flower of such significance to Zelda that her heart skipped a beat at the moment she saw it. It was a silent princess, the most delicate and beautiful of any she'd ever seen. The flower's petals were in perfect bloom, with a strong bright green stem and petals that coursed with shades of ocean blue and purest white. The colors blended together so wonderfully that one couldn't tell where one began and the other ended.
Those who were so lucky to have looked upon its reflection were graced with a smile from the goddess themselves. As the legends say, a most treasured and rare flower indeed.
The princess recalled, with a glance toward Link to see if he noticed as well, but he was preoccupied with helping the others ready the feast. Zelda reached for the gift.
For me?
She said, smiling.
For the pretty princess. Mama says you saved us and blessed us.
The girl chirped sweetly, handing Zelda the flower. A tear fell from Zelda's cheek as she grabbed the flower.
Thank you, little one. It was love that saved us,
She said, voice husky with emotion, but only loud enough for the child to hear her. Gently, the princess wrapped the child in a hug and gave her a soft kiss on the forehead. The little girl, perhaps embarrassed, shyly ran back to her mother, a woman who was preparing one of the banquet tables just a few steps away.
Come, everyone. The feast is here.
Impa declared as men bustled out from around her home, a lot of them carrying platters loaded up with all manner of food. Link looked toward the group just in time to see what could only be his most anticipated prize, the fire-roasted piked pork, which immediately set his mouth to watering. Two enormous Sheikah men ushered it forward on branches thrown over their broad shoulders, carefully leading it toward the center of the table. Everyone soon found their place at the table, Zelda having the place of honor at the center of the largest table, with Link to her right and Impa to her left. Despite the fact that the whole village had turned out for this grand feast, all sitting at the multitude of tables placed out for the event, their number seemed so few to Zelda's eyes.
I'd estimate this at only about 150 people.
Zelda thought. She had hoped that more survived the calamity. As if she could read the princess's thoughts, Impa turned to Zelda.
Don't worry yourself, princess. Many survived the destruction of 100 years ago. They simply do not live here. Some are in Hateno, others scattered throughout the many provinces of the land. Many, many lives are now safe, thanks to you.
Reaching out with her aged fingers, Impa took Zelda softly by the chin, lifting her head. The girl sighed softly as the deep, familiar comfort warmed her soul. Something about Impa's words always had that effect over her. No matter how dark things might seem, Impa always had the ability to lift her spirits.
And now, let the feast begin!
Impa declared toward the eager gathering. With nary a second thought, nor a moment of contemplation expression, Link attacked the piked pork with ferocity of a starved beast. Zelda could not help but laugh at the sight of him slicing, ripping, and tearing at the slab of meat. It was only natural, she supposed. Link's family might have been members of the royal guard of Hyrule's royal family, but they were mostly conscripts, commoners of low birth. Link would never have been raised to possess the sort of etiquette expected of a typical royal feast. Zelda paid that no mind. She didn't care in the slightest. She loved that Link was this way, so very different from her. He made her laugh, and he was wild, adventurous, and fun. Castle rules and formal things had always bored her. Step this way, sit that way, use this fork, not that spoon. Trivial, meaningless things as she saw them. Nightfall came, and the feast carried on in much the way it began, with echoing laughter, plates clattering, and the noise of song from wonderful musicians. Sheikah, who played traditional drums and melodic cymbals to fill the hearts of the theistic people with joy. The old men of the tribe sat back and lit up long pipes and blew intricate, multicolored smoke rings across the sky that twirled around the stars with such shimmering beauty as to leave the princess breathless. Zelda felt at peace, Link by her side. Slowly, the icy feeling that had long haunted her from a time when she was once thought all hope was lost was melted away by the friendly hands and warm smiles of the company of people she celebrated with. The hours passed by that way for most of the night, and many things conversations were shared, and more colorful stories were told of the princess and her brave knight battling the calamity. Until all such talk had devolved into little more than bawdy jokes made to see if Link or Zelda would faint from the embarrassment first. Paya had beaten them both to that, but who could expect any less from the timid girl? As they laughed into the wee hours of the morning, dawn rapidly approaching in but a few hours, things mellowed considerably. The once roaring fires was now composed of barely glowing embers, soft orange light twinkling as the smoke rose up past the rooftops and into the clouds.
Perhaps just one last song before bed,
Impa said, getting the attention of everyone who was still present. Across from Link and Zelda, on the other side of the table, still as statues and leaning against a wall, stood 3 Sheikah men. The area quieted to such a low hush as the men began to sing their low tune.
Rest your head, princess, come to bed. The hero will come once again. You are young, your time will come, goddess. Shines blessings through this song. Wipe all your tears away. He'll come and save the day. He, our hero of light. You are young, your time will come. Goddess shines blessings through this song. Rest your eyes, calm your heart tonight. Love will win in this ending fight. Sleep all your fears away. He'll come and save the day. He, our hero of light.
Zelda felt power in that song that she had never heard or felt before, yet somehow it was familiar. Feeling her eyes growing heavy and tired, she looked towards Link, who was already fast asleep. She smiled at the realization of just how busy he had been all this time, just like the song had said.
He has been fighting so hard, overcoming adversity, besting trial after trial, continuously devoted so selflessly to his duty.
She thought.
After all he has been through, he's earned a quiet rest.
As the song vibrated in her soul and echoed throughout the village, she rested her head upon Link's shoulder.
At last, all is well that ends well.
She couldn't find the strength to keep her eyes open a moment longer. She finally felt safe and at peace and fell fast asleep resting alongside Link. Impa saw them both hunched, still sitting on the bench. Even though they were hunched against the cold stone of the wall, she could not bring herself to wake them. Instead, she simply placed a cozy knitted blanket over them and left them to their rest.
you.